Erowid note. Driving while intoxicated or tripping is dangerous and irresponsible because it endangers other people. Don't do it. This took place 8 years ago, when I was 20 years old. From the ages of 18 to 22 I took either mushrooms or LSD about once a week, and have tripped only 3 or 4 times since then. It began at a field party full of college students, about 100 people, most of which were tripping. I ingested 4 to 5 grams of mushrooms, and was having an absolutely wonderful time. Often mushrooms would make me feel very unsure if the setting was wrong, surrounded by non-tripping people, or trapped indoors in a claustrophobic environment. However, the vibes from the people were wonderful, and the beautiful night and large bonfire all worked together to give an enlightening experience. To me, that amount of shrooms was rather large, and my mind was definitely in another world. But it was a beautiful world, as I was filled with a wonderful sense of inner peace and joy that is somewhat indescribable with words. Staring up at the sky, I felt at one with the universe and all of nature around me. My mind was full of the deepest thoughts, and I could have sworn I had discovered the true meaning of life. However, it's times like these when the otherwise simple tasks become impossible, such as talking in a way that made sense to anyone but myself, or walking without thinking really hard about how to walk, or just simply functioning normally. I find it funny that many times previous to this I had bad experiences on shrooms on much smaller doses, as it all goes back to the fact that setting is everything. I always felt that shrooms were best experienced outdoors, close to the trees and anything else nature-oriented. Also important is to be surrounded by like-minded people. All of these things were present on this particular night, and my feelings were showing it. Unfortunately, things were about to take a very strange turn. For a reason I cannot remember, as this was 8 years ago, my friend and I decided to leave. This was out in the country, and we had about a 30-minute drive back to my apartment in the city. There was no traffic, and we were engaged in a conversation about how crazy it was that this substance was illegal, etc. 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 During those years I often sold marijuana, LSD, and mushrooms. Since I did make a lot of sales before the start of this party, we had in our possession many baggies containing 1 to 2 grams each of mushrooms, and about 25 hits of acid, and an ounce of pot divided in separate bags. I had never been in any trouble in my life, so I thought very little about getting busted. I sold on a very small scale, and really only made enough to smoke free pot and take free mushrooms, and maybe some spending cash at the bar, as I was a poor college student. Now back to the story. We were quite oblivious to the world around us at this time, as we were peacefully enjoying this magical drive down the road. I had a beer in my hand, and at this time the strange trip began. I swear on my life that all of this is 100% true, as I know it may sound somewhat unbelievable at times. As I was taking a drink of my beer, I realized that out of nowhere, or so it seemed, there was a car to my right. I glanced over and to my horror it was a cop. I have no idea why he did this, but he pulled into a parking lot of some sort, and as we looked back we saw him pause and then start to come after us. We had a quick moment as we went over a hill where we thought he could not see us, and we were grabbing all the little baggies of shrooms and I was quickly throwing everything out the window. We thought we had gotten everything out. He followed us very closely for a mile or two, and then pulled us over. We were now in a suburb area, and there was quickly 2 other patrol cars on the scene. The first words from the cop's mouth were, "Did you guys really think I couldn't see you trying to throw beer cans out the window?" We were very happy to hear this. As we stepped out of the car, they found about a 12-pack of beer, and on the floorboard a baggie containing a gram of shrooms. A cop set it on top of the car, and announced to his fellow officers that we had a joint. However, another cop came around and took a closer look, and announced that it was instead a stem and a cap. They handcuffed us, and by this time I was really starting to freak out. The lights of the cars were flashing everywhere, and it was a constant battle in my mind to try and deal with this forced reality. My mind was unfortunately still in La La Land, thinking about what is infinite space and similar thoughts. It was nearly impossible to keep cool. I thought we were screwing up, but I guess we must have been acting okay. Before one cop reached into my pocket, he asked if I had any sharp objects which could cause him harm. I replied, "Not that I am aware of." At the time I thought this was a perfectly reasonable answer, but he thought otherwise. He demanded a yes or no answer. I then said no, and all was well. They put us in the patrol car and took us to the station. We were then split up and put in separate interrogation rooms. What happened now is strange. We had no chance to discuss what we were going to say, but somehow we both said the same thing. We said that at the party we used my friend's car as the stereo, and many people we did not really know were going in and out putting in CDs to listen to. Someone must have dropped it in the car. They actually bought the story, as they figured we would not be stupid enough to get pulled over and leave drugs on the floorboard in plain sight. They charged my friend with contributing to the delinquency of a minor, as he was 21 and there was beer in the car, and I was only 20. They wrote out charges for possession of psilocybin, mushrooms, and said the charges and circumstances would be sent in and we may or may not be formally charged at a later date. The fact that we both said the same thing greatly aided our case. During the interrogation, I was doing everything in the power of my mind to stay with the situation at hand. The questioning cop was very close to my face, and the room was so small and incredibly light that his forehead appeared to be green, and at times I thought he seemed like a mere shell of a person, and not actually real. After about 2 hours, they decided we were being honest enough and they let us go on a signature. We called my friend's girlfriend, and she came to pick us up as they had his car towed. We then went back to where we threw out the drugs and collected everything. We parked a ways away on a back road and approached from a different angle than the street. We were then sitting back at my apartment, smoking a joint, and realizing that the nightmare we had just gone through was actually nothing more than a mere inconvenience to our trip. We were never sent anything, and we were not ever charged in any way. Even his contributing to the delinquency of a minor was never heard from again. Needless to say, we never called to see why. Getting arrested on mushrooms is definitely a strange trip indeed, far from the ideal setting.